Welcome to the Vega Fairground Jam. This is a weekly session that we run every Thursday at 6 p.m. BST. This is a chance for everyone in the community to learn a bit more about the Vega testnet, to hear from various different people in the Vega team. And today I have with you Tamlin, who is an ex-trader, who's traded across many different markets, and we'll be going across margin requirements, basic principles of margin requirements, and margin management within the Vega testnet, which we call Vega Fairground. So Vega is interesting because it manages margin in a slightly different way to most other trading exchanges out there. And so Tamlin will go into a bit more detail on that as we go through today. So during the session, I will be posting relevant links and I'll be answering your questions in the Twitch chat. If you have any questions, do make sure to post them in Twitch or on our Discord server or in the Telegram, and we will try and get back to them and we will answer them live for some of the questions at the end. And towards the end of the session, we host a Zoom room where some of you guys who want to get a bit more personal with the team can ask us some questions directly and have a chat a bit more about the design choices behind the Vega Fairground testnet. Without further ado, I will hand over to Tamlin and she will start talking to you guys about basic principles of margin management.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming along to another Fairground Jam. Really excited to share with you today a bunch of stuff around margins and leverage and position management. Many of you have been playing on our very first ever incentivized game on the Fairground, and a bunch of questions have come up. So I thought this would be a good one to cover off. If you'd like to really deep dive into margin management, I think not so much margin management, but how the calculations are done and how the sort of the thinking around margins and risk on the system, our Dr. David Sisker, our head quant, did a really great research jam a while back. So check out our YouTube and check out the playlist of jams and dig that one out. It's brilliant. I'm going to be back in 2 seconds. I'm just going to close the window. It's a bit noisy here. Give me a sec. Okie doke. So now I'm going to share my screen and as usual take you through a little presentation. Today's going to be a little bit, I'm going to go between a few different tools. So bear with me, there's going to be a bit of switching around. But we'll start, again, it says host is disabled screen sharing.
You now have host rights.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's do this. Right, so today we are looking at a super simple guide to margins and leverage. Like Megan said, there are some things that are a little different on Vega, so I'm hoping to give you a bit of insight and some sort of pragmatic tools and ways to look at things. Right, so what I want to cover off today is you'll have to forgive me, I reused an old presentation and everything's all animated in a way I didn't realize. So, but what I want to cover off today is the mechanisms for Vega's margin and leverage, margin and liquidation mechanisms, looking at how to think about leverage, and I'm going to show you a really great tool that one of our quants, Vitold, just made for the community, and dig into some principles around position management on Vega. So that was the agenda. Right, so what I wanted to show you here is basically a look at how collateral kind of moves in the system. So many of you who have watched our recent calls or listened to Danny speak about the Vega bridge contract will understand that collateral that is most of the time, except actually in the current testnet game, but most of the time the collateral for trading exists on the chain to which Vega is bridged, and the initial bridge is to Ethereum, and so we are using the Ropsten test network, but in the future we expect other bridges as well. So then basically what you will be used to seeing perhaps on the console, and I'll share my screen later and show you this, but basically when you deposit an asset, it becomes an available balance for that asset. So say the available balance is DAI, that sits in what we call a general account, but it's displayed on the console as an available balance. And then every time as a trader you open a position in a market, what that does is it incurs margin. And so what the system does all for you is it calculates how much margin is needed, and it automatically, essentially, you can think of it as moving or locking up, taking from that available balance into the margin. And it does that through a mechanism, for the most part, that's margin search. So when you first open a position, it incurs the initial margin. And then after that, and we'll go through this in a little while, what happens is there becomes a back and forth between the margin account of the market and this sort of general account for that asset. And this is a search and release process. Really nice for traders in terms of trader experience, because it's all very transparent. You know what will cause a search or a release to happen, but you don't have to self-manage that at all. Now, some people have asked, well, what if because actually what happens then is this available balance. If there was another market that settled and margined and DAI, it would be doing the same thing. So you'd have those same back and forth arrows going on. And so what that effectively serves on Vega is what is called cross-margining. So it means that the gains that get made on one market can get used to offset the margins of another market. And if you don't want that, if you want to sort of isolate a margin scenario, you just create a different key every time you want to trade a different market, which is also easy to do. So then what you have is, so that's the relationship between the margin and the available balance. Now what you have is there are other open positions on the market. I mean, that's by definition. If you've opened a position, there is a trader that's also opened a position. You don't think of this on exchange-based trading, and this is true for any exchange-based trading, including centralized exchanges. You don't think of yourself as having entered directly into the deal with that other person. More, it's like you've both entered into a deal with the exchange operator, let's say. And of course, in this setting, that exchange operator is a network. And so if someone has gone long, say one futures, so you've gone one long futures and then the other person is short one futures, what happens is there is settlement activity that happens between you. And that this can happen through regular mark-to-market settlement on Vega, and that's what you'll see, and I'll show you this in a little while. It can also happen at expiry, and then as we deploy more products like perpetual futures, it might happen on a daily basis or on a more regular basis. The settlement happens from using external data. So there's settlement back and forth between the participants of the market. And then if that settlement can't be covered for whatever reason, maybe this person has been gone bankrupt, or they just can't afford it, they don't have enough money in their margin account, or they don't have enough balance in their available balance of that asset, then the market insurance pool is used to cover those settlements. And again, I'll dig into that in a little while. And then the market insurance pool gets collateral added to it when traders are liquidated, and basically the remaining of their margin is confiscated and sent to the insurance pool. So that's trader collateral movements at a very high level. Then let's have a look at for LPs, so liquidity providers of the market. So very similar, you've got this available balance, but a few things are different. You'll notice that there's this new concept of a LP bond. And that is because when you put when you opt to become a liquidity provider of a market, you choose to stake an amount of the margin asset of the market as a way of sort of saying how much liquidity you're wanting to provide. And that bond basically serves to act as backup collateral. It's like an extra layer of backup for the market. And so the bond is essentially used. If you run out of margin as an LP, then the bond gets used. And you get a little bit of penalizing for that. And actually, I probably should have added that in, as in the market insurance pool. It partly comes as a result of liquidations, and it can also come as a result of LP having their bond used to cover their margin gets a little bit of a fine as well. But otherwise, it's a fairly similar process. You've got this search and release situation happening on the balance. And in the case of LPs, that search and release is also helping top up that bond account. So then again, you've got settlement with other open positions. This is all the same with the market insurance pool, that one caveat aside. And then, of course, you've got this market fee pool. Now that is populated by any price taker of the market is paying a portion of their price taking fee is a liquidity fee, basically. And actually, what's really interesting about Vega is that liquidity fee is set by the liquidity providers in the market. So they can choose to set a really low fee, or they could choose to set, a high fee to attract other liquidity providers, or a low fee to attract, traders and price takers in their market. So, but regardless, the fees get sort of put into this fee pool, this liquidity provider fee pool, and that basically provides liquidity like payments, let's say, or rewards back to the LPs of the market. And the amount that an LP gets is dependent on what their equity share, like what they were able to buy in at that market. And I'm not doing a deep dive on the liquidity provision mechanism today. We do have some great videos on that. Again, I recommend checking out our YouTube. And I think next week, and definitely the week after, we're going to do, probably the next couple of weeks, we'll do some deeper dives on the liquidity provision side of things, maybe some quite hands-on sessions as well. Right, so let's have a look at the margins just as an overview. So all open orders and positions incur margin. Now, Dagan said, there are some things that are a bit different about Vega. The fact that open orders incur margin is a little different. And the reason for that is, it keeps the network safer if the orders, it's sort of known ahead of time that order, when it trades, can be backed by the trader or the pseudonymous entity that's put up that order. But unlike other decentralized trading systems, at least the ones I've seen, because Vega is a blockchain designed from the ground up for trading, we could choose to not have the sort of traditional gas fee per transaction. So putting in the order doesn't incur a transaction fee, but it does incur, it means that a portion of your collateral is going to get booked up as margin to support that order in the event that it trades. And the requirements, as I mentioned earlier, for margin, they're calculated continuously. And again, we'll dig into that in a little bit. So Vega automatically deploys margins to support open positions on a market. That was that automatic back and forth, the search and release that I mentioned in the previous slide. Vega performs mark-to-market settlement on a near live basis. That's how the current implementation is. And it may be that down the track that can change per market and per instrument, but definitely the cash settled futures that are currently on Vega are marked to market it again whenever the mark price changes. And the mark price is currently set to the last traded price. So for those of you, the more astute traders among you might go, oh, hang on a sec, that sounds like, you could then bully the market and collect mark-to-market settlement that sweeps back to your general account that you can go and use on other markets. Well, there's protections against that with the price monitoring circuit breakers. So definitely dig into that, but you should definitely try and do that. This is the kind of thing that the Fairground is for. See how creative you can get. And then Vega automatically liquidates positions that become distressed. And I'm going to dig into that really at the next page. But what's a sort of important point for this is that the liquidation happens atomically. So the network can detect that trader is distressed as a result, perhaps, of a margin reevaluation that's happened after a mark price move, right? And so the network can detect that trader is distressed, and they go and they source liquidity. The network sources liquidity from the order book to cover those distress, basically to switch out the distressed position. So now a trader who can afford to maintain that position has it. They probably get it at a pretty good price, hopefully. If the network is using the order book there's a good chance that it's using potentially depth of the order book, and so the buyers and sellers are getting a nice price. So yeah, some of you I know in the game have seen when you've had on your order history, you've had orders that are placed by the network. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing liquidation orders on your behalf. Okay, so let's talk about the margin requirements. So the sort of major starting point for calculating margins that the network does is it calculates what's called a maintenance margin. This is the margin that it's like, you can't, if you go below this, you're considered to not be supporting your position, and the network is, or that market is at risk that you're not going to keep supporting it. And so it's at that point that it switches you out. So say, and this is calculated using a risk model that is parameterized actually by, again, really by the community actually, because when you propose a market, you can set those parameters of the risk model. And there's some really great levers to pull. The most impactful input to the current risk models is the sort of forecast forward volatility of the futures. So yeah, you should definitely have a play with that. But when you first place an order, you're actually charged the initial margin. So I've got this note here. These are scaled using network parameters. And when we hop into the console in a second, I'll show you where you can see what those network parameters are. And those network parameters are used across all markets. So they're just a scaling up of however much of the maintenance margin that the network deems is a good amount. So you start off at the initial margin, right? Now, I think I'm going to come back to this because I think that my next slide is useful. Let's see. No, it's not. So I'm going to just go back here and just do one more thing and just say, okay, so you start at this initial margin. Now, it was actually back some slides. Sorry. If we go back here, if you look at, sorry. Yeah. Yep, we know what the agenda is. Okay. All right, cool. If we come back here, looking at the trader collateral movements. So if you think about this, is this margin deployed number. It's like, you can think of it like an account that you're sort of collecting money into. And remember that we said here that one of the ways you collect money is through this settlement. Now, settlement can be, as I said before, settlement at expiry or settlement, like interim settlements for perpetual futures or other type of, products that have interim settlements. But remember, I also said that there's live mark-to-market settlement happening. So what can be happening is money is either flowing in or out of your margin account because the position is either going in your favor or against you. So if we go back down to, let's skip past all of this, go back down here. So if you start at the initial margin, the way that you're going to get money coming into your account, like things are going well, is because, so say we were long at this initial margin, and say the price went up, so the mark price is ticking up, I'm getting settled against that mark price. So because I'm long, I'm receiving money into my margin account. And I might get, if I receive enough, like more than $1, so say I get to receive $1.10 or something, what actually happens is the network takes the full $1.10 and it sweeps it to your available balance, to your general account of the asset of the XYZ alpha, and it just sort of snaps you back down to that initial margin. And then another way that you can get money, you can, as I said, have money leave your account, is that you are losing money. So maybe the price is going down. You are, say it goes down so much so that you are now at 20.6, let's say. So you're still fine, you're 20.6, it just sits there, the system's not doing anything. It's like you've got enough. But if you head down to 20.5 or 20.4, and that can all happen in a single move, right? Then the network is like, hang on a sec, we need to go and search. And so it searches from your general account and snaps you back up and it searches enough to take you back up to your initial margin. Now, what can also happen is it can sort of, in one sort of fell swoop, go right below your maintenance margin, right? Like, so it can gap, like markets can gap and just suddenly move. And it could go so far down that suddenly you're below your maintenance margin. In this case, the network will detect that, you know, even though it's gone down past the maintenance margin, you've first gone through a search, let's say. And so again, it will go and search. And if you've got enough money in your general account balance, it will again snap you back up to the initial margin. But if you're going down, 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 it gets to the search level and it goes to search for collateral and you don't have any, it's going to still keep trickling you down. It doesn't, in this zone between the maintenance margin and the search level, it's not closing you out. You've still got time to, it's a bit like a margin call. You've still got time to go get, you know, money into, all you have to do is get it into your general account. Maybe that's coming in from gains from another market. Maybe it's money that you transfer onto the bridge. But basically, you're fine. But when you get to this maintenance margin level, oh dear, and you don't have enough collateral, then at this point, you're considered a distressed trader and your position is immediately liquidated using your order book. Right. So the futures margin calculation, and again, this is going to be a really good one for you to check out David Siska's presentation on this. I think it was a community call. I highly recommend that, but just at a very high level, as I said, everything starts with that maintenance margin and then everything gets scaled up. Basically, the maintenance margin is comprised of two sort of components of the calculation. It's looking at the slippage cost of closing the position out on the order book. So it's saying right here, right now, if we had to go to the order book and close out this size of position, what would the cost be? And what that means is the bigger your position gets, potentially, the more like cost you're incurring on maintenance margin. So it's got that kind of nice property. And then the other, and the reason for that, by the way, is it's just that you're sort of essentially a higher risk to the market. You have a larger open position. And then the other thing is, the other component is looking forward. You're saying, how much am I concerned that this position is going to move against me? And so that's over the next time step. And that TAO, that's how that time step is actually one of those risk parameters that I mentioned earlier. And it's saying, look, how bad can this move be? And of course, remember I said that volatility parameter has a really big effect. That's because it's like, look, it's really volatile. Even over a short period of time, it can move a lot. So that's basically what the maintenance margin is comprised of. And this calculation assumes that you have been mark-to-market settled up till at the point that you're doing that calculation, which is what the network has been doing. All right, so yeah, so if we just have a look at this, so we've got the margin search and release, and over here we've got Vega as a trading application built into the blockchain, natively into the blockchain. It is assessing what the margin requirements are. And then you've got this, so it's assessing what the margin requirements are. So it's making sure it's searching if there needs more margin. And then it's also performing this mark-to-market settlement going on between you and the other participants in the market. So they're the main principles of the money flow. I think if you can understand that, you can understand sort of as you layer on more complex stuff. So hopefully that all makes sense. So use of the insurance pool. I don't think I finished the slide, sorry. So what I did just want to say is that the use of the insurance pool, really it's utilized when a trader cannot, it basically happens when a trader can't afford to do their settlement. So say you've got an open position and there's a period of time where you've not been able to afford to, like there isn't enough money in your margin account to perform whatever mark-to-market settlement is happening, then the insurance pool gets used to cover that. Apologies, this is just me being too busy having meetings before this, so sorry about that. The last thing I wanted to end with before I go and show you some other tools and things to think about in terms of, we're going to have a look at leverage and we're going to have a look at some other things, is we're about to publish, I think in the next week or so, hopefully, there will be a open repo which has our specifications of the system in it. They're very rough, but they do contain a lot of jam-packed information. And one of my favorites is this, it's spec number 8, and it just maps out the trading pool workflow. It was just hand-drawn by Barney a couple of years ago now. And basically it looks at, here's what happens when you submit a order to Vega. And that can be submitting an order, it can be amending, canceling, it can be other things going on. The system first checks to see that you have enough margin to cover that order. If it does, it processes that order. There may be trades that happen as a result of that order. There may not be trades that happen, but either way, the system is keeping track of that, it's updating the positions. It then, as I said, if the mark price changes, it runs a mark to market. And because if there's been any trade, that definitely is going to cause the mark price to change. Then it reruns evaluation of all the margins on the network on that market for all the traders. It uses the risk models to do that, and it then may need to do some transfers back and forth, as I said before, in that to your available balance or back to your collateral. And then it basically tends to recheck margin levels, and then it may be that your margin levels aren't enough to meet the requirements, that you don't have enough money to meet the requirements. If that is the case, then traders get considered distressed and get put into position resolution. If the margins are all okay, you kind of process the next transaction. The actual workflow is a fair bit more complicated than this now, and there's a lot around sort of the repricing of pegged orders and liquidity side of things. So this is sort of quite a naive look, but it's a good introduction. And once we open the spec up, it'd be great if you guys have a look and check it out. So I wanted to make some points about the life cycle of an order. Yep, orders that incur margin, they're not processed if there's insufficient margin. Orders that result in a trade, they open or net the closed position. The market settlement occurs every time the mark price changes, and margin requirements are reevaluated constantly, and position resolution happens when you can't afford to cover your margins. Great. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. So just so on that final point, actually, so position resolution happens if you can't afford to cover your margins. The insurance pool is used if you can't afford to cover the settlement. So that marks market settlement. Great. So I'm going to just stop there. I'm sharing for a second, and I'm going to do a little time check. As usual, I'm going right over. Right. What I want to do is I want to just quickly pop to the console. Show you a couple of things there, and then I'm going to show you the very cool tool that Bithold has made for us. So, on my screen again. Okay, so here we have the console. Hopefully everyone's pretty familiar with this. You can find it at console.fairground.wtf. This is connected in. I'm just actually going to start at the beginning where it says my workspace. And what I want to do is have a look at this network view. So I'm just going to pull it over where I can maybe put it a little bit taller. A little bit higher now. Cool. So this network view is showing us the network that's currently running. And in fact, we've only fairly recently restarted it after some of the bugs were fixed. And the games are back on. So please get playing again. One thing I want to show you was in these network parameters, I talked to you about that scaling of the margins from the maintenance margin, and you can find that here. So margin scaling factors. So yeah, have a look at them. And if any of you ever think that they should be changed, remember, ultimately it's a community that decides how all of these network parameters are decided through on-chain means. And and you'll be able to propose governance, put governance proposals in that propose changes to those. So definitely check them out and see if you think they're working well. Let's just go. I've only got some DAI collateral at the moment, so I'm just going to pop into the Aave DAI market. And I've got no orders or positions. I don't have any because the network was restarted. Okay, I'm going to leave the console then. No, actually, no, I am going to just deposit some. So here you go. Anyone who wants to learn how to deposit, follow along here. Oh no, Boston. All right, give me a sec. Actually, I should actually have some of the. So I should have some of the game assets, but I don't seem to, and I think I must have just been connected on the different accounts. So I'm going to share again. Okay, so if you're wanting to deposit, you just pop in here. You can go get some TDI. I'm connected to Ropsten now. I'm just confirming it on the screen. You can't see. I'm going to run that faucet and grab some dye. The reason I want to show you this is I want to grab some dye and I want to open a futures order and show you how the order incurs margin. And then we'll have a look at what's happening over in the margins, and we'll start to talk a little bit about leverage. Don't forget, I will stop talking in about 5 or 10 minutes time. That will be myself and others in the team will be in the open Zoom room straight after. So let's just go using that. So yeah, if you guys want to ask any questions at all, even really simple ones, like how do you get a testnet account, please ask us. Cool, so that's just depositing. You should see that come through in a sec. And hopefully, just refresh. Oh, it's a little bit slow today. Let me just double check I did finished that process. Yeah, it's just processing. Let's give it a little bit longer. But actually, while we're waiting for that, let me show you over in the market info. So this is an Aave dye market. If you look over in the market details, which you can get to, by the way, at any time by just coming over to where the list of markets is and click on details of any market you want to look at. You can see it brings up all of the market data. These are, for those who haven't ever dug into this before and you're wanting to understand why you're being charged the margin that you are, come and check out this risk model. These are the numbers I was talking to you about. So the two most important are the tau. This is set to a really small time period. I think it's about an hour. I can't really do that in my head. And the sigma, which is set at 50%, which is an annualized volatility number, which basically relates to sort of, as I said, how in the sort of price path going forward, if you're to model the price path going forward, sort of how much it moves basically over the time period. Okay, it's not depositing assets for me. So what I'm going to do is just disconnect from this. I don't know why. And I'm just going to go into a different, so I used Tamworth Fairground Jam last time and I remember my password. Let's see if I've got some Fairground assets. I reckon I do. Yeah, I do. So look, I've got these XYZ assets. Yeah. These XYZ alpha. And none are deployed. I have been playing around a little bit, not very successfully as you might have seen. So let's put an order on now. Let's look at the market. So I'm in the wrong. All right, you're going to learn how to make a workspace. So I want to create a workspace for the Dodgems market. So let's click that and click add. Great. Good. Now the price is 1001.06, 470 by 471. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to put on one future because it makes the math a little easier as we look at things. So if I go 1001.06, I'm going to go 468. So this shouldn't trade. I'm going to go long. What we can see down in the bottom left is that it's placed an order on the book. It's an active order now. And the price is, if we open this column a little bit, you can see it's that 0.0468 that I put on. Right, so that's great. That's the description of my order. If I go over to my positions over here, this is what's going to tell me what this order is costing me. So if you have a look, it says that, so there's no average entry price because I haven't traded this at all. It's just sitting passively on the book. You can see where the current market price is, and that's going to change around as the market trades. Not a lot of trading going on. I don't know what's happening, but hopefully somebody can put a trade on soon. It's pretty passive at the moment. But here's what I wanted to show you, and this is really important, is this allocated margin amount. Now, this allocated margin is 26.88.568. If I click on that, it brings up those levels that I was showing you before. So the 25.88568 is the deployed amount. So it's the amount that after going and searching, it's the amount that's sort of held in the margin account is a way to think about it. So this, basically what can happen is so nothing's happening at the moment. So this is not moving at all. This is all static. But if there was trading going on, like if someone were to buy at 72 right now, hint, any of the team who are watching and are on, or any of you, then you would see that, because the mark price changes, this gets recalculated. But in any case, so the allocated margin is that. And if you have a look at the thing that you need to think about really is how much margin you want allocated as the initial margin. It will give you a little bit of buffer to go down, but really not that much, right? And again, you can find that out how much by looking at those network parameters. So it's going to let it go down a little bit, but after that, it's going to actually go to your available balance and start searching for the XYZ alpha assets to top up your margin account. So when you are coming to decide how much size of a position you want to put on, you want to keep that in mind, because if I were to have gone and put on, like, so it's costing what, 26.88. So say I had 10,000 and say it's costing around 27. So I could maybe have gone and tried to put on like 370 futures, but in no time at all, it may happen that, you know, the market moves slightly against me and I get wrecked. And anyone who's traded market futures knows this kind of dynamic. So you definitely want to think about your available balances containing risk capital, basically, as well, risk capital to cover what you're doing. So, and that's just to answer a few questions that people have had around sort of this mechanism and how it works. It's important to know that that available balance is going to get consumed and used by this market. Cool. So there's been questions around, so actually let's just trade this market now. So let's just think about cancel this order, which I should be able to do right from here. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm actually going to put in an order that does trade, and the easiest way to do that is just do a market order. I'm going to go long. And let's see, yes, that's opened some volume now. It's giving me an average entry price of this 0.08466. Great. Now the smart price hopefully is going to change if people start trading. Still not really happening. But if I click on here, again, you can see now this new initial margin that I've got. So it will have started, the initial margin will have started at the 94009, and then I must have made a little bit of gains because it's now at the 521. This isn't quite lined up in the view, but it's sort of like this has gone above the initial margin slightly. And we'll see how the market moves. And in the white, if it's in the white zone, you're good, basically. If it's in the green zone, you're sending money back to the available balance, maybe to use on other markets, maybe to withdraw altogether. And then, as I said earlier, if it sort of goes down in a way, like if it gaps down and there's available balance, you won't get closed out. But if it goes down and you don't have available balance, you will get closed out. And if you put big positions on, that can happen really quickly. So we've had people ask about the leverage. Oh, by the way, you can see what your margin estimate is, by the way, before you put it on. And so it's sort of a nice little indicator. This margin estimate is important to know that it's, you know, it's really just assuming that this order that you're about to put into the deal to put is your sort of first and only order. So it's not considering the whole portfolio, but it's still helpful. And it's really, I just tend to use it by putting a quantity of 1 in here so I can just get a sense of what 1 will cost me versus others. So then I want to show you over in our, I don't know if many of you know, but we have a research repo on Vega protocol. It's an open research repo. And we're starting to develop out some tools and useful things there. And if you click into notebooks, there's a, I think it's in this, yeah, there's a notebook that Vital just created today basically for you as a community to use to help do some leverage calculations. So I was playing around with it earlier. You do need to go, well, I needed to go to my my code window. So I'm just going to have to reshare that. So just give me 1 step. Okay. But definitely clone this repo and have a play with it. So this is the notebook that Vitald's created. I'm not going to run it right now because I ran it earlier, and it's actually using a different key. But basically what you want to do is go grab your key from the console and paste it here. And so just to remind you that the key is up where, so if you go into your wallet and then it will have a list of your keys, and you can give those keys aliases and so forth. So I was just using this public key from earlier. And what happened is, so this nice little chunk of code is basically helping me see my leverage. And so, well, it's really cool because it goes and grabs any market that I had an open position on and provides this tooling. So it showed the, so I'll come back to the effective position leverage, but this leverage per margin level is just looking at like, what is basically the cost versus the, so the margin requirement versus the difference if you had to essentially buy that at the notion, at the face value. So if for a Bitcoin US dollar, if I were paying US dollars to buy my Bitcoin, how expensive would that be versus what's required of the maintenance margin? And so the maintenance margin is the lowest margin, so it's got the sort of highest implied leverage. But keeping in mind, you can be sitting up at that release level, and so you've got a kind of actually really a lower leverage in reality. Another sort of statistic that I like to look at is capital utilization, and it tends to be the way that I tend to think. So it's sort of a slightly different way, and it's basically looking at how much I'm using in margin relative to my capital, basically. So as you know, if you've got that 10,000 of the XYZ alpha, how much are you going to use on your margins, and then knowing that the rest is there as buffer, as risk capital. So yeah, highly recommend you go and play around with this. It's very cool, and I would rerun it again, but I'm scared it'll break and we're running out of time. But oh yeah, I said I'd say the effective position leverage. I just have to remind myself, but I think this Vital put this as he looked at basically the notional versus like essentially the total money you have on account. So I think that can be kind of useful as well. Yeah. So I think my numbers are super low because I just have a lot more. I had a lot more money on my account than I had using. So please check that tool out, and then I feel like I was going to do one more thing. Actually, sorry, I will just share my screen again. One more thing is I promised people if we look at the liquidity side of things. Right here. Sorry. Here we go. Great, so we go back here. Just remembering, and if you go back to the Test Jam a few weeks back, I did one that was focused on orders, and I showed you that you can put liquidity provision orders in from here. So I thought it would be fun to just do that right now. So if we go, I've got 10,000, right? I might be like, oh, I want to put it all in liquidity. I wouldn't recommend putting it all in liquidity because you're not leaving yourself any buffer. So that commitment is all going to get used in your bonds as your bond, basically. And then you also need capital to supply the margins that are the result of your liquidity provision commitment. So let's just put a small amount in. So why don't we start with like I don't know, let's see 1,000, see what that makes. So you get to nominate a fee level. I'm going to be really generous and go like really low. And then what you do is you submit these pegged order shapes around the mid price. Again, I won't go into this massively now, but what I wanted to show you was if you go like, say I want to put this quite far out. Yeah, something like that. And I want to put these quite far out. Great, so you can see that I'm sort of 0.005 up from the mid price and then 0.009, and I'm just going to put even amounts actually. So I'll go 1, 1, 1, 1. Great, okay, so that's the shape of how I want the liquidity orders to be placed on the book. So I'm going to place a liquidity provision, remembering I've nominated 1,000 commitment. And what we're going to see over here, up where the collateral is we're going to see, so if you have a look at what's currently deployed, I've got 26 deployed. And that's for my one open position. And if I click this little arrow here, I can see that I've got this. This is my general account. As I was talking about, this is the margin account. What's going to happen is when I place this, you'll see a new account appear, which will be, so let's click that. Let's hope this is going to work. Pending, right, it brings in this bond account. And see how I said that full 1,000 gets used in the bond account? But look what's happened to my margin. My margin's gone up, right? My margin's gone up because they now, if I look down at the orders, if I look down at my orders, I get these orders that are these pegged order type that are so cool. And they're basically pegged around the mid in that shape that I just specified. And they're all incurring margin. So when you look at this allocator margin over here, this is now the margin that is the result of, it's the result of this +1 of open volume that I've got. So I've got an open position, but then extra for the orders that were placed on the book. So now what I encourage you to do, and I would love to hang out and play with people doing this right now, but I kind of feel like it's getting late and I should just, I've used up 50 minutes. Come and hang out in Zoom and we can play around with this, because when you play around with the shape, you get different sized orders. So at the moment, all the orders are just size +1, but we can play around with committing more bond and changing how far away from the mid they are. And you'll see that the size of the orders changes. And if the size of the order changes, that also impacts how much the margin requirement is. You can see you start to get to play around with how are you deploying your capital the most effectively. And these are all the fun decisions that all of you are going to be making over the next few days as you place them on Fairground. So sorry for taking so long over all that, but I hope that was useful to some of you. And please let me know if there are any further questions. Otherwise, we will jump into the Zoom room.
Feel free to ask questions throughout the week on the Discord, Telegram, or any of our other social channels. And we will catch you next week at 6 p.m. GMT +1 for Vega Fairground Jam. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.